Hi, my name is Nell, and I'm a rising senior at Menlo Atherton High School. For my project, I'm building the Wally emotive robot. And so for my second milestone, what I've gotten done so far is I've hooked up my LCD display, my ultrasonic sensor, and then both of my LED matrices, and then my battery all to a circuit. And then I've also started assembling my head module for my robot itself. So starting with the circuit, what I've done is, well, first I've removed the need for the computer by adding the battery to it, so that just eliminates the power source issue, so that way the battery can eventually, all this can eventually go into the box component of the Wally. And then I have put my LCD display with my circuit, and so what that does is, right now, if I put my hand in front of this ultrasonic sensor, then the writing on the LCD should change. And the reason that I did that is because in my final project, the Wally will have a display that can change based on if somebody's closer or farther away from the robot. And one of the challenges I ran into when I was hooking it up was the original programming that I had set up for it had it so the LCD display cleared itself every time it was going to display new information. And the problem was that because this was hooked up to my ultrasonic sensor was taking in new data pretty much every few milliseconds, which meant that the LCD display was updating every few milliseconds, which meant that every few milliseconds the screen was clearing and then redisplaying information. And so then that made the effect of the screen was flickering on and off. And the way I got around that was by changing my coding so that way the display only clears if the writing on the display is supposed to be changing. And then the other thing I did was I hooked up both of my LED matrices to a perf board. And this is also hooked up to my ultrasonic sensor, so that when I put my hand in front of the ultrasonic sensor, the smiley face and the frowny face flip on the two LED displays. And the reason that right now I have it set up so they do the opposite thing is because I wanted to make sure that I could get both of them working differently rather than doing the exact same function. Because one of the issues with the LED displays, or the LED matrices, is that the I2C addresses start out as the same, which means that when I am programming it on my computer, the computer doesn't recognize that there is two separate LED matrices. And so what I had to do was basically short this little button on the back of the backpack, which would allow the I2C address to change, so that way I could program two separate LED matrices. And then the reason that I hooked it up to this perf board is, first of all, it's going to be sitting right into these little eye sockets over here, and these will eventually be the eye displays. And then also because I wanted the LEDs to be hooked up to the same input, so I have, even though both of these technically have 8 pins between the two of them, right now they are all operating off of these 4 pins, but I'm still able to control both of them individually, which is pretty cool. And then moving on to my bracket and basically skeleton of my robot. So one of the problems I ran into when I was putting this together was, so these two servos are, which are these little motors that allow the movement of the head, are connected with these mounts. And the problem was that the mounts that I ordered didn't come with servo hubs, which I wasn't aware of until I got them, which meant that I couldn't attach this bracket to allow the mount to rotate. And so what I had to do was design the servo hub myself on my laptop and then 3D print it, so that way I had the right size and proportions, and that it allowed me to do what I wanted it to. And then the other problem was that the original design, well, this design for the face plate and this bracket back here, the white bracket, and this base, this blue base, so those weren't originally designed by me. And one of the problems with them is they weren't designed very efficiently for putting the actual robot together. And so one of the problems I faced was some of these screw holes are just really inconveniently placed, and as well as the spacing between the white bracket and the blue faceplate is really close and really inconvenient for when you're setting up your LED matrix. And so even though those weren't huge problems, they did kind of give me some, made me take more time to put it together and sent me back a little bit. But overall, this was relatively simple. And so my next steps are to get all of this kind of working with this and my servos, kind of all together, working as the robot is supposed to work, as well as adding my wave shield, which will allow my robot to create noise. And then finally, hooking all of that up to a separate controller. I haven't decided if I want to do radio or Bluetooth yet, and so then that will let me control my robot remotely rather than having to program it or have it plugged into my computer as I'm using it. Thank you.